This was I thought this was an extraordinary story. The Chelsea and Australian footballer Sam Kerr. She's been cleared of racially aggravated harassment following an incident at Twickenham police station. The 31-year-old was accused of abusing PC Stephen Lovell after a dispute with a taxi driver. Have a listen to what happened.
You should have spoken to the...
Stupid and white. Honestly, you guys are stupid and white.
Okay.
I'm over the... This is the world problem. Wait on the call. Wait on the call. Wait on the call.
All right. I'll go over at the moment then at 3:17. You're under arrest for criminal damage because there's an allegation that you've smashed that taxi window. You're also under arrest for racially aggravated public order for the comments that you've said.
There it is, a racially aggravated public order. That didn't stand. The jury cleared her. Kerr's lawyers argued her comments were about power and privilege, while Kerr testified that she felt she was treated differently due to her skin colour. Let's speak with the barrister and writer. Steven Barrett is with us. Steven, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Hi.
Good to have you with us. I mean, this was an extraordinary case, but she was found not guilty. Job done.
She was found not guilty, and that is our system. So what we should do instead is talk about the underlying philosophy and the arguments of her lawyers and what is going on here and whether we all agree with this underlying philosophy, which is the idea that white people are inherently in some way powerful. And as a result of being in some way inherently powerful, you're allowed to be racist to us.
Yes.
And I think that we need to challenge this because what's actually quite touching if you read more of the detail is that the officer was genuinely upset. But the man had not expected any of this. Probably because we are an established and successful multicultural country. You don't expect people to start going around saying this type of thing. And if you looked at her demeanour, and you bleeped out all of the swear words, but she wasn't behaving how a polite person behaves. That's not how I would behave towards a police officer of any race. You know, it's just not.
And if you call somebody effing white and stupid, or effing stupid and white, or whatever, pick your order, I would imagine that comes firmly under a certain banner.
Well, I mean, to my mind, the ideology is racist. So that we need to get this clear. What is racism? Because if racism is if we accept her arguments, if we accept her lawyer's arguments, then you're never going to be able to be racist against white people. And I think that's just clearly wrong. I think that just has to be, by all logic, wrong. There's no way that can be true. And I would rather use the definition of racism used by Dr. Martin Luther King, who's a very good and decent man, and no reason at all not to use his definition and to say that people should not be judged by the colour of their skin. They should be judged by the content of their character. Yeah. And if you see how that young lady was behaving, she clearly does not have a very good character. And it doesn't matter. I don't care what skin she's got.
Indeed. I mean, that was the curious bit, that, she talked about their kind of... And I did hear somebody this morning try to sort of create the argument about power structures and whiteness and historic positions of power inherent within the system, and somebody like Sam Kerr, as somebody who has, I think, Anglo-Indian lineage, she would be the victim of that. So the police officer, even without saying it, was a kind of a tacit threat by dint of his existence almost. That's how bonkers it is.
Yes, and I think that argument is so rubbish that really it should collapse under its own weight. But I think people need to look at how racist that is. That is basically saying, by dint of an inherent trait, their whiteness, that people cannot change, they are somehow inherently bad. I mean, it's clearly not how power was actually divided up historically. It's clearly not how power is divided up today. Yeah. But even historically, it's wrong in our country, because I'm afraid, Ian, as you probably know, power is divided with the Normans having it all and the Saxons having none of it. And so that's how it was for hundreds and hundreds of years. My two grandfathers I never met, because both were dock workers in Liverpool and both died in their early 60s because they had unhealthy lifestyles and because dock working is a hard and onerous task. And dock workers did tend not to live till their 80s and 90s. So I never got to meet either. I don't consider that a privilege. So this is just a nonsense idea that there is some sort of racial system that we live in or have ever lived in. And I certainly don't want to live in one. I just don't want to judge people based upon the colour of their skin. I want to judge them on the content of their character. I must be allowed to do that.
Well, you'd think so. I mean, it seems fairly reasonable to me, and I always thought that courts were all about that, that you are able to, your lawyer, your defence lawyer is able to, be able to usurp the prosecution case by saying, well, it looked bad, but blah, blah, that's the whole point of our system, and it's great. But the idea that it kind of just boils down to a colour thing, and her comments were interesting. She said, I regret, during the trial, she said she regretted the way she expressed herself, but added, I feel the message is still relevant. She denied using whiteness as an insult, and she claimed I believed it was him, the officer, using his power and privilege over me because he was accusing me of being something I'm not. I mean, that is... But by any standards, a sort of, if you put that in a dissertation at university, you'd be kicked out for idiocy, frankly. I mean, it's just a stupid thing to say. But that's the line she went on. I've no doubt that a very tasty lawyer was able to coach her in that line in some respect. But she believed it was him, the officer, using his power and privilege to accuse her of something she's not.
I think we really need to nip this in the bud now. So the last time we had what seemed like an odd verdict was over the statue case in Bristol, and the judge allowed the barrister to put an argument to the jury, and then we basically used the machinery of the system, because we had a robust government who was more than willing to push back, to get that changed so that in future that argument would not be allowed to be put to the jury. I think we should use that mechanism to attack this argument. Not least of all, Ian, so for 14 years I've mentored kids from disadvantaged backgrounds, and they are of all races. And I consider many of them my spare children. And I don't want half of my spare children told that they're being inherently powerless, and I don't want half of my spare children being told that they're inherently discriminatory and bad. Yes. The fact is, all the kids are exactly the same because they come from disadvantaged backgrounds. That's what makes them the same. And that's the burden that they have to overcome, not some sort of mad view of the state that tells them that they're weak and pathetic. They're not.
Indeed. And I think in this particular case, I think I'm right in saying, Stephen, that the judge said he disagreed with the jury, which again is great that we have a system where the judge can go, well, it's not what I would have done, but there's 12 of you. It was unanimous. What do you think would have swung a jury to believe that someone using the term effing stupid and white was not a racist comment? What would they have, in what context would they have been able to place that in their own head to be satisfied this person wasn't guilty?
Well, they would have bought into this argument about inherent power structures, which we think is so silly we don't really need to dissect it. But maybe we should challenge it much more abruptly, because otherwise seemingly sensible people are buying into this argument. It is all around us. It is being promoted by all sorts of institutions, and all sorts of public money is being spent to spread this message. But it is inherently nonsense, and we do need to challenge it. I wish the government would use the legal mechanisms available to challenge it. I will be very surprised if they do.
And of course, what had happened here, just a bit of background, is that she'd got into a cab with her partner, and one of them had vomited in the taxi. So the taxi driver was very upset about this, and some sort of argument ensued, and the cab driver decided to drive straight to the police station. In this, a window was kicked in, as I understand it, by one of the women, and that's what caused this moment to arrive on the desk of the humble PC, who discovered he was white and stupid merely moments later. Police asked her if she had about £100 to cover her fare and clean up the vomit, as well as extra damage to the taxi. She yelled that she was not paying for some dodgy C-words window, and that she would get the effing Chelsea lawyers on this, meaning the Women's Super League club for which she plays. The court heard that when she was asked about paying, she brought up her banking app and waved her phone about to the police as though to show them she had plenty of money. I mean, she was half cut at the time by all accounts, but I mean, this is not pleasant behaviour, right?
No, it's deeply unpleasant behaviour, and it shouldn't really be directed at officers. I mean, one of the things that I do in life, I'm more than happy to criticise, the leadership of the Met, and when we have a dodgy police officer, obviously we all need to know about that and deal with it. But the vast majority of officers are extremely decent people who work extremely hard in order to keep us safe, which is why we show them basic courtesy and respect. This lady was not behaving in any way decently. She wasn't behaving pleasantly. These are all deeply wrong things to be doing. And in terms of power structure, the fact that she's extremely wealthy means that she probably has more power than the poor officer. And it's just, I think it's time that we must challenge this argument, because it's not going to lead to anywhere good. There is no way, I can't see how you get to a good place by even believing this nonsense. So I think it does need challenging. I think it's very disappointing that our government will be too spineless to do anything. That upsets me more, because at least the last one would have challenged it.
Spot on. Listen, Stephen, it's great to have you on with us. We will speak again, I hope. Steven Barrett is barrister, Spectator writer, on the curious conclusion of a jury who decided that actually she wasn't guilty of any kind of racial harassment or racially aggravated harassment.